Here we go. Hi, everybody. Australia's cowgirl medium, Tonia Reeves, coming at you from Animal Dreaming Radio Show today. And I'm really excited to have Jo Buchanan on today. And Jo's book, which I have just finished reading, so that was great. It arrived and I got to have a good read before Jo came on, and absolutely love your story, Jo. Like, it was this book you will grab and then you can't put down. And as I was sharing with you, mine's got little dog ears and things, because it was just like I was like reading it everywhere. I had to take it with me. So we all love a good book that we can get into, and really rapt to have you on the show to share your journey, because I really feel the message in your book is so relevant to people now that are really starting to look at things a bit differently and, you know, embrace a bit of change. And your journey has certainly been about that. So, you know, for those that are watching, you're going to love Jo's journey and her story. And so where do you want to start, Jo?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, that's up to you. It's up to you.
All right. Well, a lot of people would know Jo's children. They're all actors and actresses in their own right. And I know I grew up with knowing Beth, I think was the name that really, I was just like, I know that actress. So you've got Beth, Miles and Simone. And are they're all still acting now, aren't they?
Well, Simone is at the moment she's in Queensland doing a movie playing John Jarrett's wife in a horror story. Beth is still acting, but she's also studying at university to become a social worker, and but she does a bit of acting on the side. And Miles has stopped acting. He became ill. He developed major depression and bipolar disorder. He did extremely well, movies and TV, and won a Logie and did all that, but he had to stop the acting. Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And
you've shared that story, you know, of his journey and us, yourself and the children in the book, you know, as you have woven into that story, which is really lovely. You've really shared, and I also loved with the book that your journey. So you were brought up in a spiritualist environment, Jo, which I loved reading about.
Right. Yes, yeah, I was. Yes, Mum and Dad, you know, were part of a spiritual group. Yeah, which was pretty amazing back in those days. Dad was in it in the 1920s and 1930s. Yeah. He was also a ventriloquist in vaudeville back in those days, a comedian. Yeah.
So
he was really
and that would have been really unique with doing that back then. I would imagine there wouldn't be many that would have done that.
Yeah, he was meant to be Australia's top ventriloquist of all things.
Wow.
And he was, but he was very much into, he and a couple of the others very much into the spiritual stuff, and they met, you know, and had what they called seances, and they had an amazing medium, Stanley Walsh, who was a physical medium, which meant he was able to, you know, materialize apports of certain physical objects, and I was born into that family. So I didn't know anything different, really.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, Jo's connection is a little bit crackling. I'll just say to a couple of the girls. So bear with us, everybody. As we know, our internet can be challenging, but Jo's story is really a great one. So we will persevere with that, and I'm sure it might pick up. So we've, you know, and you've shared a lot of that journey with Mum and Dad, and the fact that you were connected spiritually, well, obviously through your parents, and obviously with the showmanship, and even yourself when you were younger, you loved that as well. So it's like that's your children, obviously, you know, they come from a line of talent, don't they?
Yes, they do. My mother was a classical violinist. She played violin in a classical orchestra. So she was classical, and Dad was the opposite. He was vaudeville, and, you know, he was a ventriloquist and a comedian in vaudeville, which is the exact opposite type of entertainment. But they're both very spiritual, and they both, when they met and everything, they established a mission in South Melbourne to feed the homeless and to clothe them and to look after them. And they used to every now and again bring one of the homeless children home for a weekend to stay with us. So I really got to know that side of things as well. They were incredible people, really. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. Absolutely. And diverse, isn't that really? Like you say, very opposite.
Diverse. The diversity is ridiculous. Yeah. Yes, yeah. That's what
that's yeah. So with your book, Jo, it is all about your quest and more or less, you know, I suppose throwing caution to the wind would be part of that, in that you just said, it's my time, and you sold up your house to follow your heart and go on that sacred mission of exploring. And did you always have that in your mind that you might do that, or was that just something that you came up with? Like, I know you do explain it a bit in the book, but for those watching.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't have planned to do that. What happened was in 1963, I went with my mother to Egypt and to other places, and fell in love with Egypt and came back. But of course, I became a school teacher, and I was working as a teacher. Then I also studied psychology and so on. I worked in the mental health area, and also I took classes and workshops in spiritual development and all of that. So it's a bit of a combination of things. But at the same time, I was the carer of my sister who developed schizophrenia and her son who developed schizophrenia. And so I was flat out doing everything. And then her son, my nephew, Joel, he took his life. And then 8 weeks later, my sister died. And then my son developed bipolar disorder. So I was, after being the carer of my sister and nephew in the 1970s into the 1980s, I then became full-time carer of my son. So I was doing the caring work as well as working. And then then down the track, I became a part-time carer of my mother as well. And I worked really hard. I always wanted to return to Egypt, but I thought I never could. And then time went by and my kids grew up, and it was at a time when Simone was acting in a series, a television series in Queensland called Pacific Drive, and Beth had become a member of Neighbours. So she was working in Melbourne and Neighbours. I lived in Sydney. My son was doing very well, and my mum was. So I was exhausted. I'd done years of looking after the kids and working and everything else. And I just thought, now what? I turned 50, and I thought, what the hell am I meant to be doing now? So I thought I'd follow my dream, and I took a huge risk. I sold my house, and then I went overseas, and I went to all the sacred sites of Egypt and into the jungles of Mexico, and was invited into some beautiful ceremonies in the Mayan jungle by a Mayan elder called Ombudsman. And I stayed on Native American reservations with the Hopi Indians and joined in with them. And it was quite extraordinary. And so when I came back to Australia, I wrote about these things in articles. And that was that. And I thought, well, at least I've established, I've gone back and done what I wanted to do. I wish I could go back, but of course I didn't have a cent left. And then a travel agent in Queensland read my articles and contacted me and said, I've been wanting to send groups to the sacred sites in Egypt and Native American reservations, the Mayan Indians in Mexico. And she said, but I need somebody to take them who's had experience. Would you become a tour guide to these things? Well, of course, I nearly fell over. And I said, of course. So from then on, for 17 years, I finished when I was 72 or something. I'm 80 now. It was 71. It was, so 9 years ago. And so I took either once or twice a year. I took groups to all these sacred sites, and it was extraordinary. I didn't have to pay a cent. In fact, I was paid to do it. So back home, I could still be there for my son. I could still work, but once or twice a year, I disappeared into those beautiful ancient sacred sites. And it was great. Even we were even allowed to go inside the Great Pyramid in the middle of the night to meditate. We were the only ones there, of course. The travel agent paid the Egyptian government money to do this. So it was great. We'd go inside the King's Chamber, inside the Great Pyramid to meditate in the middle of the night, and things like that. So what happened was, by taking the risk that I did when I was 50 and selling my house, I ended up going back year after year and not having to. It didn't cost me a thing.
Isn't that amazing?
I was extremely lucky. Yeah, but I do believe that, when I made the decision to sell the house, I thought that it was stupid, and everybody told me I was stupid to sell the house. It was, but I did believe that one of the signals that we get to do the right thing is excitement. And I felt very excited at the thought of doing it. And I believe that was a signal that you should follow your desire. Well, I'm glad I did, because it ended up the way it did, but I think that we should do stuff like this, not just be stuck there and being miserable and,
doing
what
just accepting that.
No matter what it is. For me, it was returning to those sacred sites, but everybody has something very, very different that excites them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that's what I love. Really. Yeah, with capturing, you captured that in the book, and I'll highly recommend for anyone to have a read and the sharing of that story, which is, you took a chance and it really paid off to be able to go back and be offered that, position to take tours. That wouldn't have happened if you didn't say, right, I'm selling my house. I'm going to, I'm going to go to those sacred sites and do what I've always yearned or had that calling to want to do. And it's through doing that and then writing that article that connected you to the travel agent that said, hey, can you come and take tours? Now, that's an incredible story on its own, on how by following your heart, it opened the door for many opportunities, which is beautiful.
It certainly did. And the thing is that it's not that I just did it and was selfish, because I had devoted decades caring for my sister, my nephew, my son, my mother, and working hard to be able to do all this. And what happened was that before I made the decision, I felt as if I was going to crash. One of the things I mentioned in the book that made me realise that something was terribly wrong with my life was that, well, for one thing, I found myself driving on the wrong side of the road once after leaving the hospital from visiting my son, and didn't even realise I was doing the wrong thing. And another time, I was in the big store, the Maya store, one of those stores, and I was walking along, and I nearly bumped into this crazy-looking woman who was staggering around, and I apologised to her. I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, because I nearly bumped into her." But in actual fact, I was looking in a mirror. I was walking towards a huge mirror, and what I saw was myself. And
oh my goodness!
And then I realised that is crazy. I apologised for nearly bumping into myself, and I think that anybody who has been under a huge amount of stress would relate to that. I had a friend, Anne Devison, and I met her through our work with Sane Australia, and she went through a similar thing. She used to drive through red lights and things like that, and she realised that she had to do something to stop all this. Otherwise, something really bad could happen. And often we do these crazy things, but we don't know what to do. And I think that we need to stop and reassess and think, okay, well, what would excite you? It's your turn now.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's those signs, isn't it, of that, I suppose it's being awakened to going, hang on a minute, something's not right here. So it's connecting to that and going, there's definite signs. And a few on the feed today, or Hayley's popped up. Yes, she can relate. She's at that stage right now. there's many at the moment that are really starting to question, moving forward in direction and what's next. And I think for us, Jo and I were talking before we came on that us in Victoria especially have been, like we've sort of been had that time where we've been, made to stop. And for many people, it's been the time of questioning. And I think it's, we've been made to think of our mortality and go, there's been so much going on in the world and so many people that are affected. I think it's one of those things that people can't help but go, hang on a minute, what's working in my life and maybe what isn't working, needs to be addressed. So I think your story is very relevant right now for many, because I feel like there's many around that have come to that realization that I don't want to be the hamster on the wheel anymore. And like you say, Jo, as women and mothers and nurturers, we're often spreading our energy to everybody else, and we're not filling our own cup up.
Exactly. There's so many carers of loved ones with a mental illness, or carers of loved ones with physical disabilities. Yep. They just keep on caring. They forget about themselves, and because they think they have to keep going. They don't realise that if they don't do something to just for themselves, they'll collapse, and then who would look after their loved one? So I think it is important to stop. You don't have to disappear for a long time. Each time I went, it was only for a few weeks and things like that. But it changed my life completely. Yeah, and I just urge people to think, hey, what can I do that's something for me? It's not being selfish. It's just trying to help yourself a bit, because if you crash and burn out, then what's going to happen to the people around you, especially if you're a carer?
Yeah, so true. So true. Yeah. Francis has popped in here saying, if you go back to Egypt, Jo, I'm going to carry your bags for you.
Thanks, Francis. That'd be great. You might have to end up carrying me. I'm bloody 80 now, mate.
And look, everyone that's watching today, I mean, Jo is doing great. And Jo was like to me, I'm not tech savvy. And I'm like, Jo, I'm not that tech savvy either. But I was blown away when I got on and Jo's going, I'm 80. I'm like, oh, my goodness, you don't look 80. And I was totally unexpected. And I'm like, you have every right to, don't worry about technology. Leave it to us. And I think that's one thing with the book. It is, you will feel inspired. And for those that, especially those sacred sites, I mean, the experiences that you share there, Jo, like, they're absolutely mind-blowing with, they're not just things that you just happen to come across. It's, really powerful insights, isn't it, that you experienced and that you share in the book.
Yeah, and you never know when you take that step, that, like when people said to me, oh, you're crazy selling your house, that's mad and blah, blah, But the thing is, if you take that leap of faith, it's a leap of faith, you never know what will happen as a result. Because what happened to me was I came back, I had no money or anything, but I knew I couldn't return again. But because I wrote the articles, I was then given like a whole new career of taking groups. And by the time I started doing the group taking, I was about 52, and I didn't stop until I was 71. And you don't know, do you? If I hadn't done that, none of that would happen. It changed my life completely.
That is incredible.
I just urge people to go follow their excitement, would be the word. Follow their excitement. Yeah.
Yes, and that's inspirational. At 52, you found your calling. So for the rest of us, I'm 50. I think I'm 51. I think I lost 1 year during COVID. But it's great to hear that, because you often sometimes think, oh God, I'm getting older. I'm probably, a lot of people I know that I speak to go, I'm probably past it, and I'm like, we're hearing stories like yours and others. It's like life can start at any age.
It can, and even when I was in my 60s and early 70s, I was still taking the groups. It was fantastic. Age didn't come into it at all. It had nothing to do with it. Still had great fun. We still did things rode horses in the desert of Arizona, rode camels in the Sahara Desert, did all the things. It was fantastic. Juggled snakes in the Mexican jungle, all until I was 71. And I would have kept going, but I just sort of had to stop sooner or later.
Well, you still seem very alert and, very, very capable at the age you are now. So I can imagine it would have been, like letting that go with still feeling, you don't, age is a number, isn't it, really?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the thing is, what I would urge people is it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be something to be travelling and going to a country like, which would be a great thing to do, especially if you had ancestors somewhere and you were curious. That would be great to do that. But even if it's just, doing some writing courses at night, you might, unbeknownst to you, you might end up writing a book, or deciding you really want to find out more about your ancestors and then writing a book for your great grandchildren about things. You don't know what can happen if you don't take that first step. Yeah.
Absolutely. And life's a bit like that, isn't it? Like, as in, we're here there's that learning, and I think the more that we embrace that, whether it's something totally different that maybe we've had a bit of an inkling that we'd like to try and we've never tried before, that could be the door of opportunity, couldn't it?
Absolutely.
So
you never
have you always written, Jo, like as in, for the writing part of it?
I've always written articles, and then I did have a book published at one stage on mental health, called Wings of Madness, and that was published by New Holland Publishers, and that did well. And but that was all to do with mental health, and was to do with the caring of my sister, my nephew, and my son, and going deeper into what it's like, what mental illness, what it's like for family members, for carers, and so on. So I did have that published, and then I had another book published, which was a handbook for carers. And then the other things were just articles, articles in New Age magazines, spiritual articles. So it's a very big difference between mental health and the spiritual stuff.
Wow.
Believe it or not, there is a difference. The way people.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Things. Well, you write really well. The book is, it's very engaging, and it's an easy read. And like I said, you sort of start it and you want to finish it. So you tend to, flick through it, quite readily. So you obviously have a natural flair for writing as well, Jo. The storytelling is great.
Yeah. You never stop. I'm working on another one now, so it's different. I'm working on the early days of Australian entertainment, and based on my father's, what he did, in vaudeville back in those days. And then at one stage, because I had been a school teacher for years in schools, but then I became a school teacher on the set of movies and television, and because I had to, child actors have to do their schoolwork while they're on set of movies and TV shows and things. So I did that for quite some years as well, which I really loved doing. And a lot of the children who, child actors who I looked after then, are now famous and living in Hollywood. I won't name names.
How cool. So your initial, because that's when I was reading the book and I thought, teacher, wow, that's, you could see, obviously you shared that was your mum's passion as well. So you kind of followed,
that's right. Yes.
You followed that journey almost like as a rite of passage for her as well. But when you look at, then it took you to be able to homeschool your children that in their acting career and others.
Yes.
It kind of puts the pieces of the puzzle together, Jo, doesn't it?
Yes, it's true. Yes. Yeah.
And it just gives you that thing of things happen for a reason, doesn't it? It's like sometimes we're not sure of what that is at the time, or we think, oh, why did I go and do that? It doesn't make sense. And then hindsight, we look back and go, oh, I needed to do that.
Yeah, hindsight is such an incredible thing, isn't it? It can be ages before you look back and you have that aha moment. You think, oh, now I know why I went through that. Now I know why it happened, because somehow or other you've developed into a different person as a result. And you never would have been that person if you hadn't been through that way back.
Yeah,
No way.
that's so true.
So life is very interesting.
Absolutely. So one of the Mel's asked, your Wings of Madness, is that still out? Can you still purchase that book?
I think maybe that was a long time ago. I think you can, if you were to Google it on the internet, you'd be able to buy it. Yes.
Yeah.
From different sources. Yes.
Oh, good. Yeah, because she'd like to buy it for her mum because she said she'll relate to that very much.
Her mum? Oh,
yes.
Really? That'd be good. Where does she live?
Mel's up my way, so she's in country Victoria. But I think she was sharing earlier that her mum is a carer for 3 people.
Right. Family members?
Yeah, I think so. Mel, is mum, they're family members with mum, I'm pretty sure, or at least a couple of them are from memory. I'm just trying to delve back into my knowledge on that. I'm not 100% sure though. And Hayley's coming to the Writers' Conference. Yay, Hayley. Great. Look forward to meeting you. We're all excited for May next year and the borders being open and we can get up to the Gold Coast and everyone get together. Yeah, Mel's put here, she's got, her mum is a carer for her husband and her son.
Oh, right. Where does she live?
I'm not sure. Mel's in Seymour, which is just north of us. Oh, where's your mum based, Mel? Is she around that area as well? I'd be interested to see where Mel's mum is. So I'm sure she'll post on the feed. But yeah, so they're pretty much all family. Oh, Pascoe Vale.
Oh, right. Pascoe Vale. Oh,
yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, the thing is, I think she'll be able to buy the book. I think the book would be helpful, and I'm pretty sure she just Googles it on the internet. She'll be able to get a copy. It's really cheap now these days. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That would be great insights. I'll look up that as well because I think it'd be fascinating for anyone going through that to, being a carer and looking after someone, especially, whether it's mental health or for whatever reason, it's certainly a journey that you appreciate gathering insights from others to share and help and say, look, this worked for me, give this a try, because you do feel, I know chatting to you, Jo, before we came on and I shared about my daughter having bipolar, it's, it's a journey that you do at times feel quite isolated on because nothing's predictable. And, like we shared earlier, sometimes we have peaks and troughs. So things will go along great and we think, oh, it's all great. And then out of the blue, something changes. So it's everyone's, I suppose everyone's experience and sharing that really helps.
Yes, I think that Mel's mum would relate to the book Wings of Madness for sure. Yeah.
No, that's cool. That's cool. And it's very inspiring. So obviously your journey here, Jo, is to be an inspiration to others and not only support your family, have all done well in their chosen fields, but to, be there and enjoy that ride with them, but also as a support and also, doing your own journey. So you've in your 80 years, you've certainly achieved a lot, which is wonderful.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah.
No, it's amazing. And I think, like you say, as a carer, it's a very, well, it can be a bit of a thankless job for many if they're not connecting with others and sharing that story or hearing of ways that they can look after themselves. And I often hear that carers don't feel that they're entitled to have that time out or they don't tend to want to give themselves permission to do things.
Absolutely. They feel guilt if they if they have those thoughts. They feel guilty. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's the way it is. Unfortunately, people don't realise what carers go through.
No, and I think like you said, or like you share with the book, it's about filling your cup up as well. And sometimes, it would be digging a bit deep and going, what makes me happy? And I'm sure for many, you could easily get lost in that carer's role and not be focusing on what it is that you need for yourself. It's almost like it's a bit of it could be a distraction to, or an excuse even sometimes to not do what you need to be doing for yourself in balance, of course, like you said.
Absolutely. Yes. So true. Yeah.
And what did you find, Jo, like as in with your journey with being a carer, what are some of the things that you found helped? Obviously, following your passion's been a big one, but during that time, were there any sort of revelations where you sort of went, hang on a minute, or things?
Well, like most carers know, I was just focused on caring. There's nothing else. I had no. That was all. I didn't have anything that was good to share at all. I just was looking after. Oh, my sister was terrible. She was living next door, and then and because she was artistic and beautiful artist, she kept going off her medication, and so therefore things kept getting worse. And her nephew developed, her son, my nephew, developed schizophrenia as well. So I was looking after him, and so then my mum got sick. I was caring for her as well. Then my son got bipolar disorder. So I didn't have time to do anything for myself. But I learned later. Later, when I started to take carers workshops, I was encouraging people to do what I didn't do. To put time aside to actually go for a walk, go have a night out, get somebody to come into the house and care and have a night out. Perhaps just think of things that they'd like to do and do it, because that's what would keep them going better than the water. I kept going for a long time, but I crashed, and that's why everything went kaput. But luckily I picked up and moved on. But to be able to keep going and to avoid total burnout, I would advise doing things that you have pleasure in doing. I know you can't do much, but you can at least meet your friends once a week for coffee or something like that, or go for a walk in the park, or do a course online in a subject you're interested in, or whatever. Yeah.
And if a few of them
is writing a journal. Have a journal and write all your thoughts and emotions down. Nobody has to read it, so you can write whatever you like. You can be as angry as you like, and guilty as you like. Write it all down. No one's going to read it. Get the stuff written down in a journal, and that helps too.
That's a great idea. You're letting that out rather than carrying it around with you.
You're letting it out. Yes, that's right.
And there's a few on the feed that are saying that they've been the same, and Mel's even saying with her mum gets a lot of opinions from her siblings, but she's doing the best that she can, with being that carer, and that can be hard from people looking on the outside. No one understands unless they've been in that position, really.
No, it's true. Yeah.
And Hayley here has also shared too. She's she's just been approved to get help for her daughter with autism and ADHD, and and it's great to reach out, isn't it, to get that help?
Yes, that's good that Hayley has got that. I really feel for her. Yeah.
And that's a very common, you hear that a lot, more so now than ever before. With and the help is needed for, especially with children, because as a mum, you do the best you can, but sometimes that extra help, whether it's, I suppose, from a mixture from professionals, but also others that can help you and give you some time out is a big one too.
And also the media doesn't help. They use stigmatic words sometimes. The media does. Somebody has a mental illness, and very often they do it for sensational reasons. They use terrible words like psycho and nutter and things like that. And I'll just share an interesting story. One time, my daughter Beth was in Neighbours for many years. She played role of Gemma Ramsey, but my daughter Simone also was in and out of Neighbours playing a role. But she, at one stage, my daughter Simone's character, the character developed bipolar disorder. And so she had to be a character with bipolar disorder. And every now and again, the writers and producers at Neighbours would write a word that was derogatory. And she said, I'm sorry, there is no way I'm going to be involved if that was, you know, a word like psychoanalysis. And they took notice of what she said, and they were amazing. They actually contacted her with everything and said, is this okay? Is this okay? And they did something fantastic. Because it went on for a year or something like that, but they chose to not use any stigmatic words or anything else. And I think that shows an improvement from what it was like 10 years ago. You know, there are people now, in this case it was the producers, directors, writers of Neighbours, but they were so good because they did not want to do that. They did the opposite, you know. So I think things are improving, even though it doesn't always
that's amazing. Right. Yeah. And it's education, isn't it? I suppose, like people, until you've lived that and experienced that, you know, that journey with someone with mental health, you don't understand. And, you know, we can sort of put our hand up to try to understand, but once, you know, you've experienced that or had a family member that has that, it's a, you know, it's a learning experience for us, you know, as a support person, and doing the best that you can to support that person. And like you say, Jo, being aware of what labels are around that can be it's disempowering to them, really, isn't it, when you're hearing things like that?
Yes, well, it was a lot worse, you know, when I was caring in the 1970s, 90s, nothing but ignorance and fear, even in doctors, GPs, you know. But so I think that by the time it came, just getting back to the book, by the time it came that I needed to have a break after decades of doing all this and following my dream, I think that I deserved that, and other carers would agree. Yeah, there does come a time. So for my desire to go to Egypt again and to do the things I did with the Native American Indians and the Mayan Indians, it was so opposite and so different from all the lifestyle I'd had before. And you come back refreshed and strong and happy. So I'm just sort of pushing the idea of doing, when you can, try to do something for yourself.
Yeah, beautiful. And it's like,
sorry, that's all. Just
no, I love that.
I feel very strongly about carers.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
More about trips in Egypt and all of that, but I do feel strongly about carers.
No, and I think there are probably a group that we don't hear a lot of support for or appreciation of enough, really, isn't it?
That's right. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
They're kind of the quiet achievers, and they're so important. And Jacinta's put here, schools in general require extra support in the wellbeing area for both the children and the teachers. And times are changing, and it's good to see they're starting to embrace that, isn't it, now more than ever?
Things are improving, even though it doesn't seem like it. They're gradually improving. Yeah.
These things take time.
Yeah, these things take time. That's right.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jo, for sharing. And we've really appreciated you taking time out to connect in on the show today. And even though our reception's been a little bit patchy, but we've got there in the end, so that's worked in really well. And you've inspired many here. There's so many on the feed that have put, you know, that find you very inspiring and encouraging. So it's like, you know, there's a lot here that have commented that they feel inspired to step up and you know, look at some opportunities that are around and change things up. So that was our driver with Jo coming on today, because her book is all about that. And we will share through the Animal Dreaming site where you can connect to grab yourself a copy of Jo's book. great Christmas present. I have to say it's a great read, and I highly recommend it to get some inspiration. And I think, Jo, you're a true inspiration, and I think that's what the world needs at the moment. So we're a bit excited to connect with somebody like yourself and get inspiration. So thank you so much for taking time out to connect with us today.
Thank you. And my heart goes out to all those who have shared, Hayley, Mel, who have shared their problems too. Please remember, follow your dream. Just take a bit of time out for yourself, because if you go down and you burn, who's going to look after your loved one? Take the time out. Think about what you'd like to do. It. Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thanks, Jo. You're a legend. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay.
And thank you all for listening today.